All right, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. In case you're just joining us, you are just in time. We are continuing with the conversation. First interview we had lined up for you as we talk about matters education on this International Day of Education, marked annually on every 24th day of January. And I have with me in studio a panel of three gentlemen. From my far right, we have Dr. Paul Muturi, the Executive Director, Pacemaker International. We also have with us Dr. Norman Kiogora, who is the Director, Kenya Institute of Special Education. And we also have with us this morning Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, Executive Director, Usawa Agenda. These very good doctors are helping me unpack some of the issues that we have in our education sector. And I'd just like to add on the list that you gave us earlier, Dr. Muturi, on what makes up a good education system. That is, just to remind our viewers who are joining us, the human resource, the issue of curriculum, the issue of infrastructure, and research. She said these have to be gotten right for us to have an education system that is transformative. But I'll add funding, and allow me to do that, because we may have all these beautiful things and beautiful, structures, learning institutions, teachers are there, the curriculum is good and it's being implemented in the right way. Research has been done, but if we don't get the cost implication right, then many learners would still be left out of this, education that we say is the biggest equalizer. And that is what I want us to talk about for this second part. Dr. Manyasa, I'll rope you in on this, looking at the issue of funding education. First of all, do we know what you're doing? Are we getting it right from your assessment?
We are definitely not getting it right. That's why we have many children at home right now, because they can't make it to school for lack of fees. First, I want us to understand that when we talk of funding, all the time people think about government. Government is funding 58% of education. 38% is by parents, and the remaining 6% is funded by other actors in the system. So the biggest problem that we have is coordination of the funding that goes into education sector. What do I mean by coordination? We know, for example, that at the moment, the economy is not doing well, so a lot of parents are struggling. So the funding that comes from parents is, at the moment, intermittent. It's not regular, it's not stable. When schools reopen, like they have opened, a lot of parents are unable to pay fees on time because of the hardships in the economy now. When this happens, government needs to bring in its funding in time to make it possible for schools to function, because they know for sure parents are going to struggle to pay their part. When this happens, the other actors who bring in not so big but still significant percentage of the funding that goes into education need to bring in their funding in time to make sure that the schools function. Having said that, I think that we have a lot of funds within the sector that, if well coordinated and fairly distributed within the system according to need, we will be able to meet the needs of all our children. Why, for example, do we still have the government allocating more resources to national schools, which are well endowed in infrastructure and teaching staff? And they are lucky to generally have very well-to-do parents who come to school and say, I think we need to bring down this old strand and put up a new one. When we have schools that don't have a classroom, as Dr. has mentioned, and I can tell you we do research, that is what my organization does, and we go across the country. And I have pictures of schools that will make you cry if you saw the photos of children and the learning environments they find themselves in. And yet those are public schools registered by the ministry. So that is a challenge. How can we reallocate resources and make sure that those who deserve are the ones who are receiving the support that we have to offer? That is one. The second, you have talked about people queuing at the MCS offices. We have all these funds floating in the country in the name of bursaries from everywhere. We have asked that this money be put in one basket. Let us have, say, the Jomo Kenyatta Foundation charged with the responsibility, because they have experience, they have offered scholarships for decades. Let us give them all the funds. give them the Elimu Fund from the ministry, give them the money from Wings to Fly, give them money from KCB, give them money from the MCA, the MP, the women rep, the governor, which they are just using to buy political support by distributing 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 to every child. And let us know, we have 10 billion shillings in bursary funds this year, nationally. Let us know Nairobi has been given 500 million out of the 10 billion. Let us know that out of the 500 million that have been given to Nairobi, Dagoretti North or South has been given 10 million. Let us know that out of the 10 million, we have distributed it to wards A, B, C, D, this much. At the ward level, let's have a committee that identifies the children who need. Make public the list of those children and the schools they are attending. And let us see that the 1 million that was given to Ward A has been given to these 10 children. They are in these schools. And this is their background. It can be verified. So that these bursary funds actually help the children who need them. Yeah. Because we have now parents who are politically savvy in the villages who are receiving funding from everyone. Yeah. So in the end, they have their children have overpayment, and they're even begging principals in school to refund the money they didn't pay because they got money from the MP, the MCA, the women rep, everyone, and their child has overpaid. Okay. They now want refund. Okay,
Manyasa, I'd like to know from Dr. Muturi whether you think the MCAs and the politicians would go the direction he's proposing, but that is in a bit. Dr. Kiogora, how does it look like on the side of learners with special needs when it comes to funding and even getting such monies, just to enlighten us on their world and how it looks like?
Thank you so much. The special needs space, there's been a lot of progress in terms of funding. Specifically, currently, the government has taken deliberate effort to provide devices for special needs learners.
This used to be a challenge before?
Before, it has been, because, Savina, when you are, from where I'm sitting, you know, for you and me, we use a pen to write. And a pen, it costs around 20 shillings. But a learner with visual impairment or blind, to do the same service I'm doing with a pen, it would require a Braille machine. A Braille machine is over 100,000.
Just one?
One. Those just basic Braille machines. Yeah. To do the very thing I'm doing with a 10 shillings pen. So this has been a big challenge, and therefore there's a deliberate effort to provide these particular devices to learners with special needs, so that they are able to do what any other regular learner can do. And again also, to me, to speak about the funding generally in the education sector, I've been in this space for over 3 years as a teacher. The country is doing fairly good in terms of funding. Because all this period I've been a teacher personally, funding was very limited. But you see right now, there are various stakeholders and government even effort to increase capitation in schools, which before was very little. And again, also on the same, you find that there are so many other stakeholders come on board to support funding. You will see the other day we had the Elim scholarships. These were not there. We initially, when Wings to Fly came up, people were excited. Now there have come so many other sponsors to support education. So there's a lot of, to me, we are doing well in terms of progressing towards accessibility. And therefore, from where I'm seated, and when you look at the funding for special needs learners, you see every learner with a special need, the cost is different depending on the severity of disability. Therefore, with the various efforts being made by various stakeholders, even in government organizations, they really support this particular space. So there is...
Like, what are the structures, from government, for example? Like, on the other side, maybe we have capitation and we can know that this is how much has been allocated to the education for every learner. Like, for now, it's over 22,000 per learner. I don't know how it looks like.
Special needs 35,000. So, yeah, so the government has also increased special needs, and even the teachers who teach these particular learners with special needs, they also get some more allowance than any other teacher in schools. So there's a deliberate effort in terms of making special need learning accessible for special needs. So that, to me, there's a lot of progress in terms of moving forward, most in this space, but a lot more moving forward with the various stakeholders. We can go to achieve a lot.
We can do better.
Yeah.
Dr. Muturi, what are your thoughts as well on this? Seems like we have money. You know, this is what I'm getting from you gentlemen. Like, we have money. Money is there. Maybe how we go about distributing it so that it gets to the very person who needs it is the problem.
Yeah, I think Dr. Manyasa was spot on, and you are spot on, Safin, as well. There's enough money in this market to be able to cover what we need to cover. The challenge is exactly what was said, the system. We have all this money all over. Some people have known how to abuse the system, and with the greed that sometimes emerges from some of us. So I have money from all this, while someone else doesn't have at all. So the system is the problem. And I want to give you one example. 2 days ago, one of the governors in Nyanza indicated as he was issuing out the bursaries that if you did not vote in this county, even though you are from this county, even though your child was born here, even though your child is actually in a school in this county, you will not receive a check. It is there in the media. It was all over. So what he was saying about political patronage, buying votes, thinking of the next election as a way of issuing this is true. So number one, we must look at the system. We must think of, do we centralize? And we know the challenges of centralization. Or do we decentralize in a smart way to ensure that we cover the entire nation and only those who deserve it? Number two, as what I see as a problem, is the disparities. And Dr. Manyasa talked about this very ably, that if a national school where parents can walk in with their big machines and, pronounce things and even drop a check sometimes, they still get more money, while a county day school somewhere doesn't even have a lab, a science lab. They still continue to get a very small amount. So that disparity, as a nation, we must come together and think, are those children of a lesser God? Or are they Kenyans like you and I? Mustn't we really think seriously about those children, whether they are in the slums, in the informal, in the rural, or even in the ASA regions? Shouldn't we really sit down and say, these are not children of a lesser God, and we need to be able to facilitate them, just like those ones who cut some good grades, some through some mischievous and other methods, to go to those national schools. So these are the ones who worked hard, but were not lucky to go to national schools. We need to be able to think about those. And finally, what I see as a problem with our funding, besides the disparity, besides a bad system, is the issue of development. I did talk about infrastructure. If we do not continuously improve our infrastructure, then at some point, and of course we are getting more children going into the school system, we will continue to have a challenge. So it's very important, as a nation, we move from that under 15% development to a higher percentage. So most of the money, around 85%, goes into recurrent. Eat, sleep, wake up. You know, we need to be able to say, are we investing really in terms of the infrastructure, so that then we can be, if we can look at money going into development beyond the under 15% that currently goes there, the disparities between different areas, regions, and levels of schools, and finally changing that system and removing political patronage. And I want to really ask our MPs, our governors, our MCs, these are human beings. Why are you punishing a child just because the parent did not vote? Really, why are we doing, when did we become this inhuman? And please allow me to say this, part of the problem we have in this nation is that people have become more and more selfish. This is why Shakahola can happen. And even the community around that, even the people whose relatives were affected, did not know until we've lost over 400 and even maybe more. This is why we are having people being decapitated. I mean, we've talked about the female gender being, you know. Mm-hmm. When did we lose our values this much? We must step back and be able to support our children. Our children need to get the education. Yeah,
I was just telling you gentlemen earlier during break that you'd be surprised at the overwhelming requests we are receiving just at our media house. or for learners who really performed well in the exams and are unable to go to school and they want their story highlighted. We do this, we try the much that we can. Some of them have been able to get well wishers to support them for education. Others are still waiting. And you've seen even in that report, the long queue. You would think it's a general election, you think these people are going to vote, yet they're queuing to go to the MCA's office to get bursary forms. The other day, I covered the Elimu Scholarship launch. And the PS for Basic Education, Belio Kipsang, said that they received over 90,000 applications, and they only managed to accommodate 15% of that population. The rest, you'd imagine what is happening right now. And I want you, Dr. Manyasa, to help a parent who's watching understand. They have a child at home who performed well. Maybe they got 400 and above marks in KCP, but they cannot be able to take their children to school yet. They hear that the government offers capitation for every learner, 22,000 as it is. They hear that there is 100% transition policy that compels every school to allow the learner to be in school regardless of whether they can afford or not. Help them understand why their children are still stuck at home. What could be the problem?
I don't know if I am able to help them understand this, but I think there is systemic failure somewhere. And the systemic failure is this, that there is a wide gap between what government is pronouncing and what government is doing at the school level. Because the school head is a representative of government in the school where they are. So when government sends capitation to school and says, let children come to school, there is a percentage that parents are supposed to pay, and especially for day schools, for instance, where parents are only supposed to pay slightly over 10,000 in a year. Why should a school head today be sending away the child despite having received capitation for that child? Why? They have sent children home. They have told, I am aware of parents who have been sent home with children because they have not paid 1,000 or 2,000 shillings. I am aware of that. For heaven's sake, why? Because you have received capitation for this child from government. You haven't spent that capitation on the child yet. Why are you keeping the child at home? I think there is a big problem in this country where, for some reason, we have assumed children belong to parents. And so you can punish the parent by punishing the child. And I have spoken to some school heads and told them, many of you are running schools in your own villages. You punish this boy today, make them fail to get education because you think you want to punish the father. And the father will die and leave you with the fellow in the village long after he has dropped out of school and his life has gotten messed up. Whose problem will he be? It's never going to be the father's problem. He will impregnate your school-going daughter. He will do other things that you don't like. We need to understand that these children belong to Kenya. And let everyone who has a responsibility over these children treat them as such. Do their best to make sure the children are getting education. So as a head teacher, what is the best that you're doing to make sure that this child gets an education? The child has been admitted to your school, government has given you their capitation, the parent is still struggling to pay the part that they are supposed to pay. Why are you keeping the child at home even before you have spent what the government has given you on this child? I think that there should come a time when you now say, okay, I'm unable to run the school, I should send the child home, but it shouldn't be the first week, the first month of the term. So government needs to get out there, speak to its agents in the name of school heads and tell them they must account for the capitation they have received. They can't receive capitation and then keep a significant percentage of those children out of school and later on claim to have spent that capitation.
All right. I'd like us to, also talk about the other side of it, because the school heads may be complaining that capitation has been delayed, capitation is not enough, but there's also something that is really concerning that the school heads themselves are doing. We'll get to hear more about that in just a bit. But Dr. Kigora, also just to rope you in, when it comes to the learners with special needs, what is it that we are doing to foot the burden of cost and also help the parent? Like what you said, the capitation is 35,000?
Yes.
But we still have a very large population of parents who are unable to even secure a slot for their children in some of the schools that offer this special needs education because of the cost. They say it's too expensive to educate a child with special needs. Most of them just opt to have them at home and do nothing about their futures. What is it that is being done just to give hope to maybe a parent who could be having such a child at home?
Thank you, Safin. And one thing I want to say that what you are saying, the costs of learning special needs differ depending on the type of disability one has. And one key thing that's very critical to mitigate this is inclusion in regular schools. So that if the learner with the special needs does not have very severe special needs, can be able to integrate with the learners in special,
like
regular schools.
Suggesting?
Yeah, regular schools. Yeah. It happens, and that's the practice right now all over, because it's also thinking that once you confine a learner with the special needs, it's also part of exclusion. So once you allow them to integrate with other learners with special needs in regular schools, then inclusion also comes in. So one thing that is being done right now to mitigate this issue of the cost is also to do to what the government, beside the normal capitation, that's what the government is giving to schools with learning special needs, what is referred to as top-up. On top of what they get regularly, then there's another extra funding in form of a top-up to make sure that the cost still in these schools is affordable by learning special needs. So a lot is happening. And then I also want to say, in general, other areas of education. You're asking, why do we have a number of learners still at home? One reason in my thinking is that we have that thinking that you must go to particular schools for you to excel. The day schools are the game changer, but very few people are willing to go to that village school. They want to go to those prestigious schools. And even we have some sponsors who will demand that for me to sponsor you, you must go to a particular category of school for me to be able to support you. So the game changer is the day schools, and we have seen.
But you told this child to work hard and get good marks so that they can go to good schools, and then here you are.
Safin, to be honest with you,
you'd understand why they would be skeptical.
To be honest with you, Safina, look at the result of the last year, KCSE. We have a number of learners in this school who have done very well. It's just a mind setup, whereby we believe for you to do very well, you must go to those traditionally prestigious schools. Yeah. But we have seen learners in this school getting A, doing very well. So I think we need to change our thinking and appreciate, because right now, the biggest number of schools in this country are day schools. And the intention was to change this particular narrative, that you must go to a particular school to do very well. So
it's an automatic university entry school.
But
they are known to be the giants in the region.
Things are different. When you look at some day schools are doing extremely very well. Yeah. It's because a teacher in that very big school, in quote, and a teacher who is in that village school, all of them have the same skills, the same curriculum. There may be a few challenges here and there, but if this particular learner goes to school with the mindset that I will do very well, and then they get the necessary support at that school level, village school, they will do very well. It's a question that you go there, but you feel there's another place you can go and do better. But curriculum is the same. The teachers have been trained in the same universities, the same colleges. I think we need to change our mind.
Yeah?
The attitude, yes.
All right. I'll give you a chance to weigh in on that as we continue having this conversation. But right now I want us to hear the Education Cabinet Secretary, Ezekiel Machogu. He spoke very, firmly against those who are charging extra levies in schools, particularly junior secondary schools. And we've seen this before in even secondary school and even primary school heads, charging what has been termed as illegal extra levies by the Ministry of Education. This is what the CS said.
Nimeunda team ambaye 10 teams tutazunguka kila sehemu Kenya, kwa sababu kuna waragai wachache ambaye wanataka kukaidi ile amri ya serikali kwamba hakuna maribo katika JSS. Your Excellency, nataka kuhakikishia kwa wiki mbili, kwa sababu tutazunguka na hiyo timu yangu katika kila sehemu Kenya kwa ile mashule 28,000 ya JSS. Wananchi, kama kuna yule ambaye ataragai alipishe ninyi hata hela moja, hata deni, hata shilingi moja, yeye atakuwa na mimi, ataenda nyumbani. Sitawacha His Excellency aniweke karamu kwa sababu ya wachache ambaye wataki kufanya kazi yao kulingana na vile natakikana.
Yeah, I mean, he loves his job too much not to allow anyone to mess it up for him. Dr. Muturi, what are your thoughts about what he has said?
I generally do not comment on political posturing.
Is it?
Paper tigers and boardroom merchants, because that's what I see that to be. That,
really?
You are before your leader and you've got to show that you've got it and you are running it. But on the ground, as Dr. Manyasa was saying earlier, it says different. I think it's time to wake up, smell the coffee as education leaders, and be able to understand the reality on the ground. But allow me to perhaps comment on something more meaningful as alluded by my fellow panelists. Number one, I want to really applaud parents. There are parents in this nation who wake up very early in the morning, some of them being rained on even during this rainy season, to be able to generate money to pay school fees. To those parents, I really want to applaud them. It's not easy to educate a child, but as I said in the beginning, there is no other equalizer. Education is very, very key. Allow me also to applaud some of the head teachers. I know we've bashed them enough. I went into one of the schools, I was doing my spot checks, and I was surprised in one of the extra county schools in Nairobi. A child arrived this past week. A child arrived not with a box, which had been indicated, everyone must come with a box, a metal box, but with a paper bag. And that child was admitted. In fact, I had everyone asking, you allowed? There was no mattress, which was a requirement. There were many other requirements. This child did not have them. But this head teacher and the team felt the child, having covered whatever mileage to be in that school and having cut the grades, should be allowed. So there are some great head teachers who have the heart of humanity and who are doing a fantastic job. Number three, allow me to applaud those political leaders who do not see everyone as a vote, who do not punish children because of the parents. To those political leaders, may God bless you. I want to encourage every political leader, please, if you've been given power, and power is transient, support those who are not able to. Give them the resources, if you do have those resources. And also check out if somebody has received resources from somewhere or they have ability. Please do not just, again, give them resources while those who completely don't have suffer. And finally, to Kenyans. Kenyans are not, there are some who are struggling, but when I go through this country, there are people who are doing very well. Every day there are mansions going up, there are apartments going up. Yes, we are crying as Kenyans, we love to.
But doing well is
But there are some who are really putting up all these, cement, mortar, putting up brick
to them,
and mortar.
they are struggling to get finances to finish those structures.
Yeah,
problems.
You can argue that, but when my fellow human being is going down and under, I think then I have my priorities wrong. If I'm busy putting up this structure and my colleague or my fellow human being is struggling. Please, fellow Kenyans, let's not wait until a child is carrying a placard, help me, I got 374, or help me. Why do we allow them to go through this dehumanization when I know I have a few shillings? I don't have to wait. Number two, I don't have to publicize in every social media that now I have supported Child X. Really, we are dehumanizing them further. How about if I have an extra shilling? Putting it towards going to a school and asking, is there a child here like the one I saw who went in with a paper bag? Is there something I can do to be able to make sure that child is a bit comfortable? So Kenyans, let's support one another.
All right.
Education is for everyone.
All right. Dr. Manyasa, and I'll take you back to what Dr. Muturi escaped, safely on what the CS was saying. And the reason I'll take you back to this is because should we blame the government entirely and, give a blind eye to the corruption, the level of corruption that is happening in schools? The issue of extra levies is a reality. We have seen reports of ghost schools, ghost students who actually are just created by some selfish head teachers to rob the government over the finances that, you know, we have to allocate for learners. Can we entirely just blame the government and turn a blind eye on what is happening in schools?
I'll come back to that. But before I answer that question,
not?
I will answer that question. I never ran away from
Why is
questions.
everyone running away?
I never ran away,
What
so I will
does
answer, I
say?
promise you. I will answer, I promise you. I just want to say something about what Dr. Kiogora said about my mindset. It's actually not just mindset. It's the reality. We had 48,000 E's in the last exam. 90% of them are from those day schools. So the probability of you getting an E from those schools is 10 times or 100 times the probability of getting an E from a national school. So those people refusing to go to those small schools are not irrational. They have seen. Most of them don't have TSC teachers even. There is one school near my home, and I talk with the principal daily, and the complaint that she gives me is this, that, you see, I have hired 5 teachers on BOM. Once I have finished orienting them and they have gotten into the work stream, government advertises recruitment. They all vacate, they go to apply for government. So I have to start recruiting afresh. And that cycle continues and disrupts curriculum implementation in these schools. And that results to the ease that you see from those schools. Sometimes is the challenge of resources, but also just the system within which they find themselves having to operate. You recruit teachers now, they leave after 6 months, you have to recruit others on BOM. Your parents are generally poor, they're not giving enough money to pay these people well. These people sometimes go for 2 months, 3 months without salary. They are demotivated. They are not anywhere near the equally trained but well-remunerated teachers who are on permanent and pensionable terms in our big schools. So those are real issues that the schools face, the small schools, and parents face that reality, and children face it. You come from this village, you have seen everyone came to this school, and everyone got a D+ and below. Why do you want to go there? To get a D+ and below. So that is a struggle that children face and parents face with their children when they have to take them to these schools. That is not to say that there are no children emerging and succeeding. They are there, but there are very few exceptional cases, not the norm, from those schools, which is the challenge that we have as a country. What is a secondary school in Kenya, for example? What is the minimum that we should have to call a school a secondary school? I think that is the next big question that we must answer as a country. We've had a national schools upgrading program for a long time. Can we have a sub-county schools upgrading program that will give these schools resources to get to certain minimum level of standard, so that every child going there, they know they'll access a lab, a library, they'll have a certain number of teachers who can be there throughout their training and prepare them for school, for post-school life. Back to your question about should we blame the government. I said earlier, head teachers are agents of government in the schools. Yeah, they cannot, what they do there cannot be, we cannot fail to blame government. You saw when parents in Isongo took the matters into their hands and said, we want to deal with this individual, it's not the government. What did the TSC do? Rushed to the defense of that fellow, to mean the fellow represents the system here. Yeah.
But it's government.
So yeah, the fellow represents the system. That's why the system comes to defend him. So we have to, we have to ask who
charges extra levies.
Yes.
Directives come from who? And the government speaks against it.
It does.
How do we understand that?
Why should the government speak against?
Because
the government has mandate to act.
Exactly.
Not speak against. We have the task of speaking against, and the citizen can speak against. Government has the mandate to act. Safin, if you did anything that contradicts the values of Royal Media today, Royal Media will not speak against you. Royal Media will act on you because you are their agent. You represent them in everything that you do. So these school heads are employees and agents of the government. When they do the wrong things and feedback comes to the government should act and show them, use those that have been caught doing the wrong things as examples to the rest that this is not what we want as a government. But if government doesn't do anything or speaks against and therefore cuts a picture of helplessness, then that will continue and continues to whose disadvantage? To the disadvantage of the children who need this, but to the disadvantage of Kenya anyway. We are disadvantaging children, but these children are the future of Kenya. So we are disadvantaging Kenya.
The whole country.
That to me is why, and I am appalled that the CS says he wants to walk around the country. He doesn't need to walk around the country. He should just visit a few schools in Nairobi. And he'll get a good picture of what is happening across the country. But besides that, the ministry has structures to the sub-county level. Why don't we empower those structures to function properly? So that they can stop anyone who is trying to go against what is stated government policy, unless what is stated is for political expedience and not intended. If it is intended, we can get the officers in the field to enforce and make sure that that actually happens.
Is that why you're saying it was a political statement? Because we have parents who, right now, they have learners at home, not because of the school fees and the legal fees, that one is taken care of, but there are extra charges that schools require that these parents cannot be able to afford. It's actually always the extra charges.
Yeah, that's why I actually called it political posting. I wasn't shying away from commenting on what the CS said. But essentially, you and I know that these are representatives of the government. Whenever there is a challenge, we know the government does come heavy. For example, the case where 17 teachers, and I'm happy, by the way, that they've been reinstated, as it was said earlier. But the government responded immediately, removing the teachers. Why can't they respond with the same speed when these head teachers are doing all those heinous things instead of going to address the president somewhere? So this is why we are saying, if we remove the system of patronage, political sycophancy, and where you have godfathers, this country will be an amazing, amazing country. The challenge is that some of those head teachers are like demigods. They put charges. Everyone knows they put charges. But somehow there is somebody who is watching over them, and they cannot be moved. While someone else does something very small, but because they don't have, that system is not supportive, they are removed or they are transferred to an area where it's regarded as unfavorable. So we must be able to act as opposed just to addressing political rallies, repeating the same things. For how long shall we say no charging, but when you go to the schools, you find there is charging? Yeah, this is what we must address.
Yeah.
Can I just add something to what Dr. Muturi said about patronage? I had an experience one time of parents who are calling me and telling me this principal is insisting that when children move to Form 3, they must buy new sets of uniform, even when the current uniforms they have are still fine. And he wants them to buy them in school at very exorbitant prices. So I called someone in TSC to say, is there something you can do? I didn't know that this principal was a brother to that fellow. And the fellow literally backed at me, how can you be saying this about my brother? And so I understood. The basis for that guy is misbehavior in school, because he had his brother in TSC, and therefore he was untouchable. And this is not a story. The brother in TSC told me, how can you be saying that about my brother? So I didn't know that was his brother. I was calling to seek help, and what I got was a pushback that was harsh. And yeah, I understand what he means by patronage.
All right. Dr. Kiogora, there was a plan by the government to set up a plant. Was it a factory that will manufacture the devices needed by the learners with disabilities in Kenya, within Kenya, yeah? That was expected to be a game changer. I don't know the progress with that, and how far have we gone, and is it something that we should be hoping should take effect soon?
Safin, thank you so much. I would like to say that, as I said, there is a deliberate effort by the government to make sure that every learner is included in the learning environment. And when the end of state directed that that particular facility is set up, funds were provided. Now, the process of now procurement is what's taking place now. The designs have been done by Kenya School of TVET. Now, the process of now, the process of procurement, the services is all taking place, but everything is on course. And we believe by the end of next month, then the real construction will start because everything is running. And this will be a game changer in special needs because 99% of most of the devices are imported. And they're very expensive. In fact, that's what makes it very expensive. So this facility will be very good because there will be production, there must be assembling, repairs, and maintenance of these particular devices. Because unless we are able to repair and maintain them, even if we produce, then the impact may slow down of what we expect. So this particular facility will be a game changer, and we will be able to work closely with the various stakeholders so that we are able to reach each and every learner in the country.
Have we identified probably why we import these devices? Is it the lack of people to make them? Have we identified the why, and have we reached at a point where as a country we are confident that we can actually produce this equipment ourselves?
Yeah, we can.
Why do we import first?
Initially, there was not, there was that aspect of we must go and buy from outside.
Yeah.
But now we have looked inside and we have said, how can we make it affordable? Because when imported, it was very expensive. So right now, the question of producing within the country is to make it available at a lower cost, as compared when we are getting from where? Outside. Right now, we work with various stakeholders so that we can be able to produce these particular devices. And we have the skills. Many of them have been trained in TVET institutions, and they're able to do this work. And we have done the groundwork. We have also been able to consult the NYS. They also have various people who can team up with us and make sure that we are able to produce this device on large scale. And with economies of scale, then this device will be much cheaper to learners with special needs.
Yeah. Please allow me to comment on that. As a nation, we must be prudent in how we invest our resources. Yeah. There is a huge debate as to whether that is even a good move in the first instance. If you travel around the world, you will find a lot of things that have been made in China, and there is a reason. We always debate between when you look at the market, where the goods are going to go, versus where the raw materials are, where should you create your factory? And this is a question that we ask MBA students many times. Should you put it where the market is, or should you put it where the raw materials are? And many times the inference will be, put it where the raw materials are. So the question we should be asking ourselves is, do we have what it takes? Not just as a people, because we have competent people, I agree, but do we have the raw materials to be able to make this? Do we have even the right, or are we looking at exporting to other markets? So in my view, I think what we should do is to look at the regime in terms of tax, to look at the economy of scale, and then to be able to say, what can we remove when we bring in gadgets for this particular community, for this particular segment of society? When these gadgets come from out, what are the tax outlay? What can we cut out? And I'm sure if we removed some of those taxes, you will be surprised how affordable those products will be. And we may not necessarily need to pump in resources. And there's always a problem with when we go into investing in infrastructural projects. Our infrastructural projects, if you compare them against other nations, they are out there. So I would have invested more in trying to find what can we remove in terms of what the government receives to ensure that these devices are affordable, and then be able to send these to everyone.
Manufacturing?
As opposed to manufacturing. There are things we can manufacture. For example, agricultural, I agree with that. But when it comes to devices like this, I have my doubt. But I possibly look at the research that Dr. Kiogora has and others, and possibly to inform.
To respond to what you've just said, because he's here, he has mentioned concerns about, do we have the raw materials? Have we looked at those factors like the raw materials, the market, as concerns that he has, and proposes that probably reducing the taxes would be a much cheaper and easier option. What do you think?
We have done our groundwork.
Yes.
We have also been able to consult with the various stakeholders. There are those quick things you can produce, like the earphones. You know, importing is expensive compared to when making them here. When we produce them locally here, they are much cheaper as to compare to when we are importing. So a number of them can be easily produced here at a cheaper price compared to importing everything from inside the country. As I've said, a number of them will be produced here. They'll also be assembling within the same facility. Those ones which we feel that we cannot be able to produce at the moment, we can assemble. But at the moment, a number of them will be produced readily in that particular factory. Something that I also want to say is that we may import, yes, but do we have the capacity to maintain these particular devices? So when we capacity build our own people, and they also have the skills, and we have a lot happening in this country in terms of people can produce these kind of things in the country, because there's also investment in TVET institutions. We can be able to maintain these particular devices. And also technology is changing very fast. So unless our people are also conversant with what are the immediate gadgets in terms of technology, then we may lose it, because we may not be importing things which also could be out of use. So to me, costs will be much lower when we make some of those gadgets within the country. Yeah.
All right. As we're about to wrap up this conversation, I'd like us to go back where we started. We are marking the International Day of Education. Dr. Manyasa, if you were to, prioritize some of the really pending and pressing issues that would make us have a reason to smile on such a day and feel affirmed that we are getting it right when it comes to implementation of our education system, what would be those issues for you?
The organization I work for strives to transform education systems to make them more just, because we believe they are unjust. Our education systems as set up are unjust, systemically designed for a smaller group of people, and then with extensions to include others. That's why in our organization we don't use the word inclusive education at all, because inclusive education means there are people at the table including others, and people are born with equal rights.
You had that, right?
That is what our constitution says. Every child has the right. So a just education from where we sit is one that recognizes not just the right of the child, but the fact that these children bring into education systems very diverse experiences and backgrounds. And so the education system needs to be reformed in such a way that it blunts the disadvantages you bring into school and gives you a fair chance post-school. Because as it is now, we have today parents with resources investing heavily in primary and using that heavy investment in primary to crowd out the poor from better schools at secondary school, and by that crowding them out from better courses post-secondary. So the system is just unjust. What will happen to your adult life is kind of predetermined with where you are when you started life. And that is the transformation that we want to see in our education system. And how do we get that? We get that by looking at how we distribute the resources we have. And those resources are not just financial. Those resources are also human. Go around the country. The best principals are heading the big schools. And yet school leadership is critical for the good performance of a school. But the best ones are heading. Even those small schools where the good results have come from, the principals will be moved to bigger schools. So that those children there continue to have poor leadership. And when a principal of a big school...
But good performance, good grades, actually one of the requirements for TSC to promote.
They move.
To promote, yeah.
And it's not promotion, because you can be made chief principal but remain in that school so that you can help that school grow. But then you're moved to another school. And then a head teacher, a principal who has mismanaged a big school, is taken to a small school. And the idea is that he's being punished or she's being punished. The question I always ask is, okay, you're punishing this poor leader by taking them to a small school. what have the children in that small school done to deserve the punishment? Because they are being punished too, with now being saddled with poor leadership that will mess their already bad situation and make it worse. So the way we run the education sector is systemically unjust, and that needs to be transformed.
All right. Dr. Muturi?
Yeah, if I was to be asked and if I had the opportunity to sit with the CS, I would tell him the following. Number one, invest in curriculum, the introduction, the implementation, the intra-level from ECD through to university, and the archaic nature of our university courses. Invest in that. Number two, human resource. We can't do this without human beings. So ensure teachers are recruited and ensure that they are equitably distributed. So then we don't have some schools struggling while others are okay. Number three, research. If we stop to innovate, we die. We must continuously change. We must continuously innovate. We must invest in infrastructure, in research. Without research, we are in trouble. Number four is infrastructure. We, for a long time, as it was said earlier, improved these national schools. How about now casting our vision towards these county schools, these sub-county schools, and trying to improve them? And finally, it's on the system of funding. We cannot have so much money in this market, yet so few are accessing it. Why? Because some is with the MCA, some is with the governor, some is with the MP, others are with. So we need to be able to change that system and bring together all the stakeholders and ensure that we have a good funding system.
Dr. Kiogora?
I want to say that every learner can learn, and every child is unique, and they can learn, and therefore no parents should shy off from taking their children to school, irrespective of the disability they have. And there's a lot of effort towards this support, and every learner should be able to access the service like any other particular child. I want to say also, parents with special needs children need to include them in their day-to-day activities, in parties, social gatherings. Many of them hide them in their homes, and then bring them to those particular graduation parties, Christmas parties. Many times we hand them. So such inclusion is very important for these learners' special needs. And we are saying assessment is very critical, and every learner must be able to go through this process so that they are able to know their extent of disability, and then the government is able to provide the necessary intervention at critical times. And then also I want to say, as I finish, that currently the effort being done by the government through means of education, it makes that every learner with the special needs is able to access quality education at all levels. So it's a great opportunity for learners with special needs to tap in the effort of the government and the various stakeholders.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Kiogora. I just want us to sample a few of your comments before we wind up this conversation and shift to the next. Remember, we invited you to share with us your thoughts on this particular conversation, and this is what you're saying on social media, on X. Engineer Lazaro, you're saying education sector, which is the backbone of a nation, is a total mess. Funding model more confusing than anything else. Capitation and ETC lacks a transparency. We also have Sir Nixon Dungire. You're saying there is no better investment a nation can make other than education. It is an investment in economic development, an investment in opportunity, and an investment in our shared future. We have Peter, you're saying CDF is very important to the development of education sector. Therefore, the government should disperse funds in good time. That is Peter for us there. We have Okelo Mwalimu. You're saying the people we should sympathize with are the school heads. They are at a very tight corner. They are required to run schools smoothly and pay suppliers and BOM staff on time without imposing extra levies and sending away students for fees. Nani atawatetea walimu wakuu? That is what he is asking. Godi Barasa Were, you're saying Kenya Kwanza administration should show some sense of commitment by adequately funding education, not the schemes we are witnessing now. That is at Godi Barasa Were, sharing your thoughts with us on the conversation that you're having. Thank you so much for all of you who created time to share your thoughts with us, and also those who just took time to watch this very important conversation I was having with Dr. Paul Moturi, the Executive Director, Pacemaker International, Dr. Norman Kiogora, the Director, Kenya Institute of Special Education, and Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, Executive Director, Usawa Agenda. Thank you, gentlemen, for creating time. And that is how we wrap it up. As we were marking the International Day of Education, now you have insights on where we are missing it and how we need to get it right. We'll be shifting gears in just a bit to talk about cervical cancer awareness. It is the Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, and we'll be having that important conversation in just a bit. Don't go too far.